All right. Well, welcome, everybody. I am honored to be sitting across the table from Kristi Abbott today. So thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome, Matt.
Over the years, you and I have had the chance to work together on a lot of projects.
Yes.
A lot of fun stuff. And it's been really cool to get to know you as a friend.
Yeah.
And an artist, and to be able to attend one of your openings
Yes.
just prior to COVID happening.
Yeah.
And we have a couple of your pieces in our home, and actually one in our camper.
Oh, nice. I like it.
So we're very thrilled to have you here today. You're just a ball of energy and creativity, and it's good for the soul to be in your presence.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
So for people who are listening today that haven't heard of you before, haven't followed you, can you give us just a quick little insight into who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an Australian American. So I was born in Australia to an American father and Australian mum, but I spent most of my life growing up in Australia, but definitely came to Minnesota where my family was from, fell in love with it, and eventually moved here 10 years ago. And when I moved here, it was definitely under the desire to leave the corporate life, which I'd been working in up until then, and pursue the dream of becoming a full-time working artist. Mm-hmm. So that was quite an adventure. I had no idea what I was doing, but I realized that first step was to develop a technique that really spoke of me as an artist and was a differentiator in the market. Luckily, I found that pretty early on. I'm a mixed media paper collage artist, so primarily working in paper, and I build very elaborate portraits, skyscapes, and a lot of commission works, hiding in a lot of them imagery that is very evocative of a theme or a person or a place. So yeah, I've been doing it now full time, pretty much that for 8 years, wow. And now have a beautiful home studio in Northeast Minneapolis, and
Awesome.
I'm also a member of the Goza Gallery at the Northrop King Building.
Awesome. And for those of you that aren't from the Midwest or aren't familiar with Northeast, it is a wonderful area of town, also known as the Arts District.
Yes.
The Northrop King Building is very cool.
Well, it's 4 floors of studios. I think there are, over almost at least 30 studios per floor.
Yeah.
So
it's massive.
It is. It's incredible.
Yeah, you need a map.
Oh, you do. It's like a rabbit warren sometimes. I'm like, and just bustling with artists and of all types, ceramists, photographers, textile artists. So very, very cool place to visit.
Yeah, definitely. So before we started recording today, Kristi, you and I were having a good conversation like we normally do. That could go on for days. But I have some notes here that I wrote down, and the things that you say and the way that you execute not only your art, but you execute your business is very vital to everybody who wants to be in art and wants to also have a business, not a hobby, but they want it. Everybody wants to eat.
Yes, yeah,
and have mimosas. So before we really get into the deeper part of this conversation, if you were gonna look at a macro perspective of your business, because you're a businesswoman.
Yes, yeah.
What percentage of you is business, Kristi? And what percentage is artist Kristi? Or can you not separate the two?
I don't know if I can separate the two. I often have said to people, I am a businesswoman first and an artist second. Mm-hmm. And I had a really interesting conversation yesterday about the difference between skill and talent. And, you can develop skills. Skills you can go to school, college to learn. Like my husband, he's an electrician. Mm-hmm. He's like, this isn't a talent I have. I learned how to do this, and now I can go and sit at a friend's place and install a ceiling fan, if so be. He said, Kristi, what you've got as an artist, that's a talent. That was something you were born with, but obviously through practice, you can hone that talent and those skills. Mm-hmm. And I think what was very interesting in my journey is that the talent of being an artist was always there. I mean, I was drawing from about 2. if not sooner. And my grandmother was an artist. My aunt does art. It's been in the family. But what was interesting about my journey is that I didn't want to be a starving artist. I really wanted, I had two entrepreneurial parents that really had grown a wonderful business and established a really great life for themselves. We traveled, we ate out, we had, we just, money wasn't something we worried about. Yeah. And so I really wanted that life for myself too.
Right.
So that had me pursue a different career, which was actually in business. So I actually worked for the family business. I went and did an MBA. I actually was voted top 20 female entrepreneurs at the age of 30 in Australia.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so
I'm learning things today.
I know. So it was just like, and in running, working in this family business and even working in an organization that taught best business practice, I learned so much, about operational excellence and product development, branding, marketing, cash flow, all of these things that they never teach you in art school.
Right.
Like never.
That would have an attendance of exactly 0.
Oh, exactly. Artists would be like, what the hell? I don't want to learn about cash flow. I want to learn about, paint jobs and color theory. And so this was a very different education. And so, and that was a skill, that I learned this skill by being in it, by practicing it, by, and understanding it. But then what I realized is that the artist in me was dying. Like she was miserable. And so I gave up the corporate world, moved to Minnesota, and then really set out to pursue my dream. But every decision I made, Matt, was definitely influenced by how can I make money? And how can I turn this thing that I love and want to do into a business that is going to afford me a really wonderful life?
Right.
So we were even talking earlier about this challenge and, my husband and I having this conversation of what would I do if I won the lottery and had all this money? Would I still work? And I'm like, oh my God, I don't think I could stop making art now.
Right.
But I would just maybe do it differently. And the business Kristi, I think, would step away a little bit because the business Kristi is the one that's like analyzing the market. What are people talking about? What are they interested in buying? What size of artworks are selling right now? So how do I fit my booth at an art fair to accommodate that and make sure that I've got product ready for people to buy? That is right. The business Kristi. Where the artist Kristi would be like, oh, what is my heart telling me this morning?
Right,
And what am I just passionate about? Letting out on a piece of canvas or a panel. So that they are two different people and sides of me that often work together. But I think the business side actually does dominate more. I would say.
I could see that. But what's interesting, I'm making notes here while you're talking because I don't want to forget these things. Being what I would consider an artist myself, growing up with an artist mother, interior designer, she taught art. I grew up speaking that language.
Yeah.
From a motivation standpoint.
Yes.
After talking with photographers, all across the country and the world, and having countless conversations. When success comes, sometimes motivation goes.
Yes.
Would you would agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. Well, sometimes when success comes too, there's added pressure to maintain that, and that can dampen motivation because you get scared.
Yeah.
There's this fear of then how do I maintain success?
Right.
And that can cause you to procrastinate.
So if I could just rewind that and turn it into a question and send it right back your way.
Yes.
I can tell by your eyes you know what's coming.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because you are very well known in this area. I mean, we have staff here at White House. They're like, oh my gosh, that was Kristi Abbott. They just worship, what you do. And how do you not let that success and that expectation hold you back?
And I was telling you this fantastic quote that has driven you know, it also motivates me on days where I'm not feeling as energetic. And I'm going to get this quote wrong, I'm sure. And I think I read it in actually an art business journal or something. And it said, you know, amateurs wait for inspiration, where professionals just do. Mm-hmm. And then the article actually went on to say, you know, there are days that you're not going to feel as motivated. There are days where the creativity is slumped. But spend that day organizing your studio, you know, do administration, email clients. You know, everything you do in an art business does not have to be creative. You know, one of the biggest things for me is actually organizing my inventory, you know, and going through and at the beginning of the season, just checking in, where am I at with everything? And spending a day doing that rather than maybe making art sometimes is fantastic. Right. But certainly when it comes to making art, especially as I have embarked on this 28-day challenge, I have to turn out a piece of art every day. Right. And no one's holding a gun to my head and saying, you've got to do this, you know. It is absolutely self-driven. And one of my artist friends actually questioned me about the mentality of this. She's like, why do you do this to yourself? Like, I don't understand. Like, she's like, I don't think I've ever done anything for a month, you know? And I'm like, I know. And after I did a 91-day challenge a few years back during COVID lockdown, and hands down, I said, I am never doing this again. Never, ever, ever. And this was different for me this time because it was 28 days. I, of course, picked the shortest month of the year. And it was February. So I'm like, hey, not much is happening in February. Right. Minnesotan weather is typically pretty terrible.
It is.
Case in point today as we're getting freezing rains. You know, so, but for me, I know I work better under pressure. I work really great with a deadline. There's another great book out there called Originals, and it's about people that lead, great leaders and thought leaders and entrepreneurs. And there's this whole chapter about procrastination, actually, that is fantastic and really spoke to me. But it actually talks about how a lot of times leaders aren't procrastinating. They never stop thinking about it. Mm-hmm. That there's always, even like, I mean, I sleep, I shower, I cook. I'm never stopped thinking about my artworks. And especially during this 28-day challenge, it's like, it's always there. And then when I sit down, all of that procrastination thought comes out. Huh. And even the whole series was triggered by being gifted these beautiful discontinued wallpaper books, and they're sample books. And my mum picked them up from Abbott Carpet and Floors. This woman had held on to them, and she's like, they're just so beautiful. I can't think of throwing them out, but I don't know what to do, you know. And my mum said, well, my daughter's this collage artist. I'm sure she would love them. And I'm like, so I go over to Mum's, and she heaps these huge booklets of sample wallpapers on me. She's like, Kristi, they're so beautiful. And immediately I opened them up, and I was just like, oh. But this was like back in September last year, I want to say. And I was just like, I have no idea how I'm going to use these, but these are going to be an artwork. And from that day, Matt, I've never stopped thinking about it. And I took these booklet time, and I put them in the basement. And then I think it was just after maybe around Christmas, I went down to the basement. I was putting something away, and I saw these booklets, and I'm like, this is what I'm doing. This is, you know, so that thought had now given birth to this idea that had now become this crazy challenge.
Wow. That's so cool. And what a neat thing to have, you know, somebody valued that and knew that they were too precious to just discard.
Yeah.
You know, which unfortunately I think in our society happens a lot. You know, just everything's replaceable.
Oh, absolutely.
And now to know that those are becoming one-of-a-kind, beautiful piece of art that
can never be made again.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you called it discontinued. That has a lot of power to it. You know?
Oh, absolutely. And even the branding for the series, it's like the discontinued stamp that you see applied to, you know, items that are no longer, you know, in life cycle anymore.
Right.
You know, and that was really important to me. to really highlight the fact that these are one of a kind. These papers. Even my mum, she fell in love with this one piece that I'd made in the series. And she's like, well, Kristi, I don't want to stop someone else from buying this because.
So can you make another one?
Yeah. She's like, so I'll let this go out in the general public and maybe you can just make me another one, after you're done. And I'm like, Mom, I can't make this again. Remember? The show's called Discontinued. And she's like, oh. So she went and bought it. But it was, because I can't. I mean, once these papers are used, that's it, and there's something beautiful about that too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So before we started recording, we were talking about an experience that I had several years ago at a conference called Promoting Passion that a photographer by the name of Brooke Shaden put on. And she had a guest by the name of Joel McCarroll. And he is a poet.
Okay.
And very powerful voice and message. And I can remember listening to one of his pieces during the conference, and then one of the students asked him, "How do you write that type of piece?" And he said, "Well, the worst thing you can possibly do is sit down with a pen and a piece of paper and try to write that piece.
Yeah,
it just won't come out, And anything that you do write is not going to be correct because you're thinking about it too much." Now, this challenge that you have put upon yourself, you don't get that luxury of, taking a week or a month or a year to figure out what your next piece is going to be. You're 6-8 hours, 28 days in a row putting out. And for those of you that don't follow Kristi on Instagram, do that because you will have a much deeper appreciation for what we're talking about here once you look at the pieces.
And that's Kristi, Kristi Artist 1.
Perfect.
Yeah, so if people want to do that and jump on and have a look, they'll see all the pieces. I got 2 days left.
So how do you, in your artist mind and in your creativity, now, you kind of started talking about this like you're always thinking, your brain never turns off when it comes to your art. But how do you sit down with literally a blank canvas and 6 hours, 8 hours later have these beautiful pieces? And again, I want to make sure that we don't miss this.
Yeah.
Like you're concepting, you're picking out the papers, you're picking out the styles, everything within this period of time. Like it's almost unbelievable. If I didn't know you, I might call a little bit of BS here,
Matt, even people that do know me. I mean, one of my girlfriends who is now down in Texas. I mean, she's like, Kristi, I gotta know. She's like, do you cheat a little bit? Like, have you made some of these already? And I'm like, no. I mean, I'm making these start every day. Wow. I don't know. We were talking about, I don't know how much of this we already covered now or how much we did before we started recording. So if I miss anything that we said before that you want me to talk about again, please let me know. I guess even this morning, so I woke up and I'm exhausted already. Like I'm tired. I finished the piece last night at about 11 o'clock. And that was after working on it pretty much all day. So yesterday's piece took me about 8 hours. And then, so finished at 11. I then watched The Last of Us and eat goizes with my husband, and sip and have a glass of wine and then go to bed. And then this morning I wake up and I knew I had to come in here. And then I'm like, oh my God, I got to make a piece today. And the first thing I thought of is, okay, what size panels do I have left? So I knew I had an 18 by 24. I'm like, that's a pretty big piece. I'm like, shit. All right. Okay, so I got to make something. And then it's just like, what can I make that I haven't maybe covered before, that I'm going to love, that is going to really... And I think this is what... I definitely covered this when we were talking before. Like, for me, the idea of this challenge too was to make art that I haven't made before. And I really wanted to push my technique. I wanted to push my subject matter. I also wanted to make fun stuff. Like, because if it's not fun, I'm not going to want to do it.
Right.
Like, it's just not gonna. I mean, it's gonna be hard, and I know I'm gonna at least invest 6 hours in this, and that. That's a decent amount of time, and this has overtaken my life.
Right.
My house, my dogs are over it. I mean, my dog like wanted to jump on the table the other day and just be like, "Mom,
you're
enough,
done."
enough." So it has. I mean, my social life, I've missed out on stuff because I'm like, sorry guys, I gotta make art today. So it has to be something I love, and so then it's just like, okay, what can I make that's gonna excite me, and then how can I do this in a day? So actually today I'm making a mermaid. So the reason, I'm in the shower, I get out of the shower, and there's this beautiful piece of artwork that I have that I actually bought from my girlfriend Shelley Harmser, and it's a mermaid swimming in a acrylic pour tunnel, and it's gorgeous. And I'm like, I've got an 18 by 24 panel. I love mermaids. I've got one more woman to create. So the way that I broke up the 28 days, and again, this is really important to maintain motivation, is like you have to know what you're going to make in a rough way. Like the overarching theme of the show was discontinued, because every single piece has been made from these discontinued wallpapers. So there's no cheating. Occasionally I've used like inks or some acrylic paints, but I mean, it's, I've gone through more blades than I've ever gone through, because these wallpapers are not thin,
Right.
So they're difficult to work with, but they're beautiful. And so, but that wasn't enough to like discontinued wallpapers. But what, the other one that I did was animals. So I did 91 animal portraits. And even then I'm like, how do I pick those? So I decided to do animals from each continent of the world. So with this, I'm like, okay, what's something that I'm going to love doing, that I think people, still that marketing brain coming in, what will people enjoy putting on their walls? What would they enjoy seeing every day? And also we're in the middle of snow drifts and winter, like what's colorful and fun?
Right.
So I decided to do, it was blooms, birds, and beauties. And so I did 9 flowers, flower theme. Then I did 9 birds. Then I did 9 beauties. And then my final piece tomorrow is going to be a piece that is culminating all 3.
Oh.
And it's going to be a 36 by 36 piece that I'm going to try to make in a day. And it's going to be, women, birds, and flowers all in one. Wow. So, and that's kind of, and that's given me direction for for the series too. And it's really nice, because after 9 days, I'm done with birds. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to turn this leaf over and move on. So that's been really important too. And I've done women, like I've done fun, like action pinups within the beauty series. I did like an Urte inspired one yesterday, a Mucha one the other day. Today's going to be a mermaid. So, it's kind of like, whatever goes, but it's finding that fun, finding that passion, and then locking it in and committing, and then making it happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just so impressed with how you are planning this. I mean, I'm sitting here going, oh my God, I wouldn't even know where to start. You lost me about 8 minutes ago. But so I recently just got back from Palm Springs.
Okay.
And had the opportunity to walk through a art collector's home.
Yeah.
And he's wanting to start a gallery, and we had got into the conversation, and you came up and looking at the art that he had displayed in his home, there is definitely a wide range of emotion and feeling that goes into art.
Yes. Yeah, very much.
And would I be correct in the assumption that a large piece of your creative freedom comes from the business side and your plan and your, what did you call yourself? Business Kristi?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Business Kristi kind of not taking over, but knowing that she's got artist Kristi's back.
Yeah.
And a lot of your freedom comes from knowing your business.
Yes, I would say so for sure.
So if you flip to the opposite side of the spectrum on that, I would also assume within the art world, there's a lot of freedom or a lot of creativity that comes from the unexpected.
Yeah.
or that comes from a darker place or a sadder place.
Yeah.
And you can tell those when you look at, different styles of art.
Yeah.
How can you, as somebody who is immersed in the art world, that is very, very, very familiar with a lot of different styles of artists, much more so than I am, how can you, as an artist, relate to both sides of that, the business and the creative side? Like how can you keep that even keel?
Ooh, that's a tough one. There are many thoughts actually going through my head listening to that. And I think one of the things that's interesting too is like art definitely comes from an emotional place. And luckily I'm really happy. Like I'm a happy person.
Yes,
I've had a really lucky life. Another quote that I love is actually the harder you work, the luckier you become. And I definitely think that's true. I was raised by two people that had an incredible work ethic, and that definitely struck true with me. I remember one of my very good friends in Australia saying to me once, I'd really started establishing myself here in Minnesota. I'd won a few awards. I'd done some outdoor art fairs and been, started seeing success. And I was like, wow, this is great. And I went back to Australia and went back for a visit. And my friend, we got a little drunk one night. She said, Kristi, I'm really glad you're not one of those really depressing artists. She's like, I like looking at your work. It makes me feel good. And I'm like, all right, that's great.
That's awesome.
Because, I think, and I also I listened to a podcast the other day that was very interesting about, is selling art selling out? And I think that there's this kind of theory or this mindset in the art scene, especially in like art school, that art is something that comes from us and it can't be valued. You can't put a price on it. It's like this intrinsic value that's beyond money, and that in fact to sell your art is kind of selling out. And I think and I'm certainly not saying that anyone that makes more emotional dark art is not interested in selling. I think that there is, when you're making it. I think if I was just to make art that didn't have and I want to say commercial, but commercial's maybe the wrong thing. I don't think it would be good. Like maybe it would be happy, maybe, but I also think it's this desire of mine to have my art translate into a sellable product that something that someone wants to buy. I think because. Yeah, this can be an expression of how I'm feeling, but I think what's important is a big part of me is wanting to connect with other people.
Right.
And I want to actually connect through my work. And I want to connect through human emotion, through memory, through pop culture, through familiar imagery. And so the language, I want to be a storyteller that creates a piece of art that tells a story of something relevant to not just me, but to other people. And I think that's what drives my work. And I think the artists that I see that are successful too are able to do that as well. They're able to make art that carries this big part of them in the piece and their emotional language, but it also connects to a much broader audience and tells a story.
Right.
Like there's this amazing quilt artist, which she uses fabric. Her name is Bisa Butler.
Okay.
And her work is just out of this world amazing. And not dissimilar to how I make my work. It's actually, but instead of using paper, she uses fabric. But all of her imagery is based on old black and white photography of African Americans.
Wow.
And, you are moved by this artwork. And she has gone on to become incredibly successful, has work in the MoMA and, goes on show and has, publications about her. And I think that's why I'm at, because she's making something that is she's passionate about and has this feeling for, but it also resonates with people.
Definitely.
And I think that that's what's important is you can feel, and I think as an artist you need to feel, but you also need to understand it's this desire to connect that makes us a part of the world and makes it, I think, I don't know, a success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, what you're talking about, being a storyteller and, creating a product that you can sell, from the photography side of things, which is the vast majority of who we work with here at White House, that's something we hear all the time. It's tell the story.
Yeah.
The session and the story of that individual and how and why they came to become in front of your lens is very important.
Yeah, and who they are.
Yes.
For sure.
Absolutely. So in closing, I just want to go back to one thing that you said before we jumped on here today that you didn't say so far.
Okay.
And I can relate back to this in a very personal way. You said, as we're talking about, basically kind of putting you this constraint on you for 28 days, you said, what's the worst that can happen?
Ah, yes.
And if we all really look at that from, basically all aspects of our life, if something doesn't work, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
My dad used to say, what are they going to do? Take away your birthday? And he said that to me 1.5 million times, and it's kind of basically like the same thing. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Take a try, take a step forward.
Oh, and that definitely, that was very apparent on Saturday. So I was telling you I'd gone out and I had brunch, and I haven't really been drinking much lately, but I did have a few mimosas. And then I came home and I hadn't had any idea what my piece was going to be for the day. And it was already like 5:30. And I'm like, oh, shit, I've got to create this piece today. And I started freaking out and really having a hard time. And then my husband's just like, honey, what's the worst that can happen?
Right.
Just start. Just like make a piece. And I'm like, well, I have this idea about this piece, but I just don't know if it's going to be any good. But it's kind of like I'm really feeling that this is what I should make today. But and then he said, well, what does success look like for this piece? Like, is it that you post it and it sells straight away? Or is it that you do something you've never done before and you push the envelope and you turn out a piece that could be crap, but it's successful in the fact that you've done it?
Yeah.
And you've delivered a piece for your challenge today and overcome, how you're feeling right now.
Yeah.
And I think that, and what is the worst that can happen, Matt? Even undertaking this challenge, like, I don't sell anything and I end up with 28 pieces of art that, I can give to my family for Christmas.
Can I be on your Christmas list?
So I think it's also not putting too much pressure on yourself. Like, I've put enough pressure on myself to turn out pieces, and I will do it. Like, and I have done it. And there have been temptations to take a day off, but I know that that's just going to make tomorrow even harder.
Right.
So with that obligation already, to just do it, and to just get started, and then to find the fun, to find the playfulness, and surprise yourself.
Right. Yes. So this has been awesome.
Yeah.
I love sitting and chatting with you. I could do it a lot. For people listening along that want to find you, you mentioned the Instagram handle earlier, but can you tell us that again, your website, all that stuff? Yep.
So on Instagram, they can find me, Kristi, Kristi, artist1. My website is Kristi Abbott, so Kristi, and then Abbott, Abbott. And then Facebook, I'm Kristi Abbott Art. Is my page. And that, I've been sharing process shots. The exhibition that people can come and see, all 28 days of artwork, is going to happen next Friday, March 10th at the Goza Gallery. So it's free and open to the public, and it's 5:30 till 9. I may be exhausted, but it'll be fun. And I'm going to give a little talk about some of the pieces and some of the inspiration. So that'll be good. Yeah.
Well, that sounds amazing. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Much. And we wish you nothing but the best in your gallery opening.
Cheers.
That's going to be amazing. And look forward to the next challenge.
Yeah.
As Kristi beats her head against the table.
Really. Never again.
Never again. All right. Well, and everybody out there listening along, thank you for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion with Kristi Abbott. And definitely check her out on Instagram and online. You definitely will not regret the time spent there. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you, Matt.
You bet.
Bye.